Hello, everybody. Peter Marabellis here. Tonight on City Lights Live, we welcome back to the house Zyzzyva magazine in a summer celebration marking the release of issue 123, the poetry issue of this distinguished local journal. We will be featuring several of the contributors reading from their work and giving us a good taste of what makes Zyzzyva one of the best showcases of emerging poets and writers anywhere. City Lights Live is a virtual reading series that began during the pandemic and follows in the footsteps of our in-store calendar. We continue to feature the works of authors we know and love through readings, discussions, and forums, moving through the summer season and into the fall. As always, we are beaming to you from the unceded ancestral grounds of the Ramaytush Ohlone peoples, also known as the San Francisco Bay Area. We'd like to take this moment to acknowledge those who have come before us as stewards of the land and offer our respects. Zyzzyva magazine is one of the Bay Area's literary treasures and one of the backbones of West Coast literary community. Via the stewardship of Laura Kogan and Oscar Villalon, Zyzzyva has brought us some really stellar and very important writings over the years. So with us tonight will be Oscar Villalon as host. He's going to be joined with an all-star cast of poets. I'd like to welcome now Oscar Villalon, the managing editor of Zyzzyva and a huge champion of West Coast literature. He will MC tonight's event. Hola, Oscar, welcome.
Thank you, Peter. It is good to be here. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for attending this summer celebration, which is actually a summer bash celebration of this, our issue 123. I don't know if you guys can take a look at that, the poetry issue. And it is indeed chock full of poetry. We have 5 of those poets with us tonight who are going to read some from the work in the journal. Some have some other work up their sleeve that they're going to share with us tonight, but that's going to be a lot of fun. So without further ado, let me introduce our first reader. She is Victoria Adukwei Bulley. She's a poet, writer, and artist. She's the recipient of an Eric Gregory Award and has held residencies in the United States, Brazil, and the V&A Museum in London. Her debut collection of poems, Quiet, was published by Faber in February in the UK. And joining us from a not as balmy, I guess, right now, London, is Victoria. Victoria, welcome.
Hi, Oscar, and hi, everyone. It's such a joy to be here. This is technically my first US reading, even though I'm not really in the US, but I'm just so honored to be here. Thank you so much. Yeah, and also thank you, Oscar, for featuring my poems in Zyzzyva, because it's my first Zyzzyva issue, but I've just enjoyed being part of it and reading through it. So I want to say thank you. Yeah, so how long am I reading for? Just so I check. 10 minutes. Okay, cool. Great. 12. Okay. Yeah, so I'll read a few poems, and this is the book Quiet, and yeah, there will be a US North American edition coming in January 2023, and the cover will be a lot more interesting than this, but for now this is what we've got. For the UK side in Faber, we've got a more typographic type of style. But yeah, thank you so much for having me. And I'll just read a few poems. Declaration. If sickness begins in the gut, if I live in the belly of the beast, if here at the heart of empire, if careful in the house of the host, if quiet at the hearth of the host, if here at the home of empire, if I live in the belly of the beast, let me beget sickness in its gut. Revision. 1. Consider From the 1400s, the area later known as the Gold Coast would be, choose one, discovered, invaded, visited, landed upon by Europeans, illegal aliens, migrant workers, tourists, Christians, hailing from the ports of Sweden, Denmark, England, the Netherlands, Portugal, Prussia. During their visit, residency, occupation, sabbatical, stay, they would alter irreversibly the ecology, lives, speech, gods, memory of the Homo sapiens, natives, people, fauna inhabiting the land. It is not clear what their expectations were. One could assume they were successful even after completing, losing, leaving, tiring of the project and going home. It is arguable that they did not actually leave. To compare, A, onion, sabolai, hint, cebola. B, chale, Charlie, hint, fan. C, hint, waterbird, duck, doko doko. D, lala, hint, lala, song. 3, consolidate. In the year of our Lord, 1471, they came. In the year of our Lord, 2017, I look for my language, still finding in it their hairs. 4, conclude. Oh, Chale, I stayed in Portugal for a year and loved it more than England, fam. Patriot, who? Water off a duck's back, 2 colonizers, 1 with better weather. What's the problem? The people were happy. It was hot. I stayed in Bulley. I'd go to the market and buy vegetables and come back to the apartment and make rice and stew. I do that when I want to feel at home. I like to think that I can bring home with me. And you know, I can't speak Ga, but our word for onion is sabolai, right? And the Portuguese word for onion, cebola, cebola. I love it. I love it and I hate it. And this year it happened again. This very January, Mum played me a video of Grandma singing a folk tune, and she told me that the word for song in Ga is lala, lala, as in deck the halls with boughs of holly, fa la 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 la. Can you believe that? And I was so happy to see Grandma so alive, singing all these words, of which I understand nothing. See her clapping all nearly 100 and fully bat-blind years of her. And even Mum didn't know the story. She just translated the outline to me, which I don't remember now. But the whole time, I could only stand there. I was just watching and thinking, damn, this lala feels sad. This one lala sounds like a sorry song. So this book is called Quiet, and ironically, I'm kind of being quiet right now. I've got a baby monitor just watching me from opposite, and this baby monitor is hilarious because it's like when it hears a sound, it has like a light that's green, but like as the sound gets louder, the light goes from green to orange to red. So anytime my son, who's 3 months, makes a sound, it's like I'm seeing sound. It's like a sort of warning. But he's cool right now. He is in a different world. Yeah, different time zone completely than even 2 a.m. where I am. So yeah, I will read a poem that is in the issue. The first one I read was in the issue. This one is also in the issue, and it's called Not Quiet, But Quiet. Yeah, really? Not quiet as in quiet, but that's the title. Not quiet as in quiet, but as in peaceful, as in slow to anger, as in shy, as in sulking or sullen, as in nice, as in clean, tree-lined streets, as in well-resourced libraries, as in good, outstanding schools, as in not much is new, as in no news is good news, as in the war is over, has been for decades now, as in early to bed, curled up with a book, as in the newborn is sleeping, as in TV barely audible, as in subtitles, as in subtext, as in someone should have said something, as in don't just do something, stand there, as in could and should but wouldn't, as in well, the British are so polite, as in placid, as in placated, as in nuanced, complicated, as in careful. It's a conflict, not a siege, a conflict, as in objective, as in both sides, as in well behaved, as in safe, as in too quiet, as in almost silent, as in almost no sirens. So I will move to the latter part of the book. It's really cool reading at 2 a.m. I feel like I'm reading bedtime stories to someone. But of course it's nowhere near bedtime where you all are. So yeah, maybe this brings another kind of energy to the sessions. Now I'm going to read a poem called The Ultra Black Fish. And I've read this in person in the UK at a number of places now. Someone at one of the last events I read it at was asking me if I had made this up. And I haven't made this up, this is true. So the Ultra Black Fish is based on a discovery of some fishes, or fish I should say. Yeah, I'm naming the scientists that discovered them. And I keep saying I should probably email her to say that the poem is not, it's not a criticism of her, it's more just I've used her discovery as a kind of means of thinking about surveillance and community and communication and what we do when we are trying to not necessarily be seen. The ultra black fish. 200 meters down, the light stops. Many deep sea creatures alive at this level of the ocean have developed the ability to create light for themselves. This is known as bioluminescence. Others, on the contrary, contribute to the darkness by adding themselves to it. Ultra black fish are one example, and in 2020, 16 varieties of these were captured. The level of pigment in their skin was so high that it was found to absorb 99.956% of the light that touched it. Karen, a marine biologist, came across them by accident. Instead of hauling up the deep sea crabs she had been searching for, her net produced a fang-toothed fish that wouldn't show up in a photograph. Held later in a tank under 2 strobe lights, the fish became a living black hole with no discernible features beyond the opacity of its silhouette, as though it had cut itself out of the image and left. Scientists believe that the fish develops their invisibility to aid them in escaping their predators. Another theory suggests that the obscurity of ultra blackfish enables them to more successfully catch their prey. It is likely that both ideas are true. Commentators have also speculated that the chemical structure of the pigment could serve the development of military and defense technologies. Nothing was said, however, about how ultra blackfish find and enter into relations with each other. Nonetheless, their existence alone is evidence that, invisible as they may be to others, they are by no means strangers to themselves. So I think I'll stop there. I have no idea if that's time, but
Oh yeah, thank you, Victoria. That was lovely.
thank you.
The book is quiet. When will it be available in the US? Besides,
So
yeah, go ahead.
So it's going to be out 23rd of January 23 next year from Knopf.
Boom, there you go. So folks, I think there's this thing called the internet. You could get it now, or you could wait until January and get the Borzoi colophon on it. It's up to you. And I'm sure the folks at City Lights would be happy to help you out with that, however you want it. Victoria, thank you so much. It was absolutely lovely.
Thank you so much.
Now to introduce to you our second reader of the evening is Joan Baranow. She's the author of In the Next Life, Living Apart, and 2 poetry chapbooks. Her collection, Reading Szymborska in a Time of Plague, won the 2021 Brick Road Poetry Book Contest. Her poems have appeared in the Paris Review, the Gettysburg Review, and elsewhere, as in Zyzzyva. And she founded and teaches in the low residency MFA program Creative Writing at Dominican University of California. Would you please give a warm welcome to Joan Baranow?
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Victoria. That was so beautiful. In fact, I'm going to read a poem. You made me think of one to read about my son. But I'm going to start with the poems that are in this issue, this beautiful issue of Zyzzyva. And this is called Inheritance. There was so little left of my parents by the time they died. Some cheap slacks, 3 pairs of jeans, neatly patched, cigarette ash, photo discs. My father gave us nothing cherished, his house already ransacked, just money to divide that divided us. My mother liked to live in small spaces, her gift of loving us gone awry somewhat. They tried. We swept the trash and kept what part of them their wills had assigned. Or was it fate? Or was it chance? And the second poem is called Caudal Autotomy. And I want to thank Laura for correcting the spelling of that word, autotomy. The definition will become clear as I read. Even with their faces shrunk to stamp-size squares on a screen, the professors are still afraid, more afraid. He called for an increase in pixels. She cautioned for less. And later, it was a matter of skirting the poison oak. Drop a bucket on a lizard clumsily, and all you get is a twitching tail. I did that when a kid. I thought I'd killed my lizard until Mom taught me caudal autotomy. Since then, I've seen how it works in humans. It doesn't. We need fairly everything we've got, which explains a lot. Some prefer to keep their faces sheeted. Some go mute. Some are still learning how to insert words into space, even without the current pandemic. Sure, I've sent a few emoji, been caught by clickbait. I've pretended to teach in a cloud. Like you, I've had my share of amputations. Still, it's hard to unmute for the joke. When the host leaves and the silenced screens go dark, one by one, the families come out to face the emptied streets and sky, hearing the sirens go by, singing from their balconies. So this poem is about my son, who's now 21 years old, but this is back when he was a teenager, and it's called My Son Says. Humans are the least evolved, coming so late to the planet. He's fixing his own dinner, ramen, broth, sprigs of arugula. I watch his deft hands arrange components in the frame of the bowl, like the titmouse nest that preceded us. Chrysalis, honeycomb, sunflower labyrinth of the puffer fish. Aesthetics serve the lineaments of desire, and desire's the root of hunger. And do roots feel? Potato vines seek aloft the taut string, hold themselves up without muscle. Cells are the smallest unit of consciousness, he says, and digs in like the wolfish dogs he loves, plant life metabolized into his particular body. A fly dives into the room, works out its angles with algebra. My son says he'll forget after the test, while the fly makes elegant cosines, understands where your hand will land before you make a move. What blunderous creatures we are, holding cell phones to our heads, unable to interpret our own pheromones. He slurps the last forkful of noodles, puts his bowl in the sink, makes to go. So I have to call out the obvious. Dearest, wash that dish. So I have another book that's coming out this October. It's called A Slight Thing, Happiness. And this cover is part of an artwork by a San Francisco artist, Victoria Chabin. She's just beautiful. It's a murmuration of birds. I'm so happy with this. So I'm going to read one poem from this book. It's called Grandma. And I'd like occasionally to enter into a folk tale and then retell it, maybe from the point of view of some character who you don't hear from in the story. So this is from Little Red Riding Hood, and it's called Grandma. She dreams of wolves, their dense aromatic fur, the red rash of their mouths. Day long, she lies there, the woven covers drawn tight to her chin, watching nothing but light crawl along the walls. Once she had carried an axe. Once she had flayed the little doves so plentiful here, the specks of their eyes bright onyx gems. She chewed their tough sinews, boiled their bones. She washed, put up peppers, swept the oiled boards, kept all her needles in a cushioned box. Now she lies still with sickness, the stink of her sweat like a dump. and that weakling of a girl, miniature of her mother, creeping in, her cloak puddled on the floor, jabbing a spoon of tepid tea to her lips. Ghastly. But she's the ghost now, isn't she? Blasted, blown, her legs like twisted rags, her stomach a pale pit. Get up, her dream voice shouts. In dreams, she crowbars the bloated door and goes past the cracked lintel, her whole heft erect, no one's lullaby. Out there's where she finds them, encircling the house, her own rough pack sniffing the land, ears turned to the woman who's had enough. Frail, naked, old, she takes a step, holds out her hand. There's a poem by Amy Gersler, whose work I really love, and it's called Advice from a Caterpillar. And I thought, oh, I want to try something like that. So this is called Advice from a Moth. Never mind your freakish start. Or I should say that you could go online and like on YouTube and actually watch time-lapse videos of metamorphosis. They have some way of like removing part of the wall of the chrysalis, and I don't know, they saran wrap it or something, and then you could actually watch what's happening in there. So anyway, that's what some of this refers to. Never mind your freakish start, your 9 legs melting, your face sloughed and tossed, your skin like a damp slip, so tough to tug off. How then for months you dried, mummified. Forget all that. You must hoist yourself out the cracked pupa. Breathe through spiracles that flank your thorax like flutes. Cling to a twig while erecting your wings. Dust it all over, crisped for flight. Enjoy the erratic path. Touch leaf and grass with your itchy proboscis. Veer from bird call, no matter the song. Your slumberous metamorphosis prepared you for loneliness. Be glad those blind eyes on your back never blink. On these brief days, mating or laying eggs, admire the silken city our species left suspended in the trees. Don't let light fool you. It's really weird. There are 20 years between my first and second book. And then this year I had 3 accepted. So it's been very strange, delightful. And one of them is a chapbook about breast cancer. And it's called Aphids in the Rose. So I'm going to read one of the poems from that book. It's called Lumpectomy. The moon is a little dented tonight on the right side, where an arm would be pressing. And that's natural to the moon, as well as certain situations. A word gets slivered off, a cup chips its lip, and accidents like standing up into a harder substance than your head. Soon, though, the moon regains her whole. There's repair to blood and hair, where force asserted its fact, and bone builds within its cracks denser deposits. Every form exhibits the seams of what was torn or taken or lost. Lovely the life left with its stitches. Even this night, tucked between granite peaks, receives from a surface slightly skewed, a bruised yet no less emphatic radiance. And then I'm going to end with one of the things that happened this past year out of the blue. I started writing, I guess I've heard it pronounced centos or centos, where you take a line from lines from other people's poems and then compose a new poem out of them. And so I gave myself a couple of rules, and one was not to alter the line, not to take half a line or anything, or not to alter the line at all, and also not to take more than one line from any individual poem, because I think that would just be intruding too much. So I think I'll end with two poems that were composed in that way. And the first is called The Human Abstract. And that title comes from a William Blake poem, The Human Abstract. I dreamed you did not return. It was March, the month of human discourse. Irony, neatness, and rhyme pretending to be poetry flapped like a rag in my ears. How fiercely I miss your vicinity. Flesh, bone, there's nothing there. Since everyone says that you're dead, my dreams had a blank area in the center. How I wish I could lean back into the past. It is burden enough that death lies on all sides, stranded without a language for it. The body itself is the vector, the only way to leave even the smallest trace, as water is broken by the falling of a leaf. For this sometimes the birds sing without purpose. Your bones, already asterisks, seems all eternity I'll ever need. The days and nights bear me along. Out of the early morning darkness, cold clouds go over, the clear air filled with ice. How even a little violence eases the mind. Only a crust of moon is left, and in a breath is taken away. And then the last poem I'll read is called Ode to the End, and it's also composed as a cento or cento. Last night, when the moon was visible again, it was the moonflowers that surprised us, floating into the night, pale, wet, alive, its crystals glimmering, each with its own clear instant. Nothing but white, the air, the light, lustrous with frost, an unrolled bolt falling as snow all over the land. Even if it's only reflected light drifting from the original idea of light as it vanishes in a skin of wind leaning in, a world like this exists, radiant, featureless, cratery, in which everything winds down in the end and holds each of us spliced together as we are. Where are we all going? I can see how, when it happens, coming on like a dark hand, the earth shakes us, the life, the breath, which will shock at first, a scattering of salt, of bone and brick, everywhere frogs shouting, the sky a pure river of dawn. And when it does end, what can your past now say to you, though it no longer matters? If you let it go, then take hold of the porcelain knob to step in the boat if the moon is a ship, feeling the icy kick, the endless waves. And when you come to that river, you float.
Great.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Joan. Thank you so much. That was absolutely lovely. And your the book comes out when again?
October 14th.
All right. And the title one more time?
A Slight Thing, Happiness, and it's from St. Julian Press.
Okay, thank you. Well,
Thank
we will
you.
look out for it. Thank you so much, Joan. Now we've come to the midpoint, folks. Can you believe it? And I don't think of him as a midpoint. I shouldn't say that. He is a proper human being. That is our next reader. That's Chris Carosi. He is the author of 3 chapbooks, and his poems have appeared most recently here in Zyzzyva, Berkeley Poetry Review, and Castle Grayskull. And he is a pushcart nominee. He is the creator of the micropress Inverted Church and lives in San Francisco, though now he works in Berkeley. Will you please welcome, I think you can call him as Pennsylvania's finest, Chris Carosi.
Thank you. I'm in a perpetual state of gratitude for Laura and Oscar and Zach and Zyzzyva since like 2010. They've been supporting me as a human being. And then when it came time for poetry, they were there as well. And really that's all I'm looking for when I meet people. So that puts you guys at like the top of the list. And I'm privileged to be in this kick-ass issue here and be featured with these poets tonight. My work is prose, little prose poems, and they're about my youth growing up in rural Western Pennsylvania, right on the Ohio border. And mostly they're from a point of view of me as a child, but it's sort of in a dreaming way where it shifts. Anyways, come on this journey with me. I'm going to read two pieces. Fuck off, Pines. It's serious right now with this head injury. My 7th. Hit with a photograph. Footprints on the sand like at the dentist's office or something, but I'm just very observant of where the spider's gone. Describe a hierarchy of insects to a bullied kid and watch their eyes darken. Callousness is very close to trustworthy. It's all wisdom and breath. Any kid that has their hands in their pockets all the time can tell you that. Beaming their transmission from right here, a goose egg in the forehead. And then it drains, now 2 tar black eyes. Mrs. M sees my forehead at Shop and Save and almost vomits. In the backyard again, things actually live here. Strange, a worm is on the driveway again. Animals are always interrupting the overcast, punctuating the house's primetime rhythm. Pine trees crinkle in the dawn like spilled cigarettes. What makes the drain black? Logs are too wet to burn. The end of the camel light won't catch that bleat in the cold wind. I seem to be the only one submitting to a song truly first sung. I whisper joy. Pain is like a temperature, so I remove a garment or put one on to sensitize. If I look at the shed long enough, there's only one way to look at it, not my house. A desire to be named like a street is, liberated from the indirect influence of the school board, deeply fucked with by the clock and the closet, but the chivalric puzzle can only be solved by my intimate knowledge of the rust-colored clay behind the gynecology office where my dad works as a second job. Knowledge birthed out of curiosity and mistrust of male friends. This is my revered collection of wiffle ball bats. The rain bruises the meadow after all this time. The grass itches, and so intimacy is to be feared, of course. Its maroon mouth is looking everywhere. A stutter blooms from inside. And so this piece, the title, so that poem was in the issue. And there's another one in there that I won't read. And if you liked what you heard, buy the issue and read the second one. This is not in the issue. And the title is a song lyric from a Guided by Voices song called The Official Iron Man Rally Song. And Guided by Voices, if you're not familiar, if you're from a, overcast, cold town, working class town, their songs seem like, like the meaning of life or something. It just hits in this way. So this is that lyric. To dine alone, to build a private zone, or trigger a synapse and free us from our traps. It's hard to be the true workman when the whole body is a crescent wrench leaning on the wall. White Christ looks down his golden nose at me in the context of the vice and the table saw. He is not primarily known as the best carpenter, but I stare him down anyway when I perform air guitar to Soundgarden by myself. We're both alive in the super unknown of the cellar. Sawdust sticking to our socks and searching for the cat. When I pray, it's usually for general safety. Anything will kill me, and survival, breath even, is a miracle at large. Is God the editor or the publisher when I pray? What if childhood prayers were the beginnings of poems, leaking through at desperate moments and I didn't realize it? Poets don't need a publisher or a publicist. They need a voice. And the voice itself, sounded, or the performance of the voice. Or now this moment when you are reading. The larynx forms around the words being read, and that's communication. The eye merely throws down a shape. My dad built a device for making rings. I wear multiple rings he made as I read this. In the summer night, I sit on the workbench and listen to the furnace sleeping. It's very dark, so I reach out with my thin arms for the black pole I know is to the left of the stair. I'm gonna crack the cellar door, which leads outside. I seek coolness and teal grass. There are literal plagues gathered in the maples. The locusts become louder when I notice the sweat running down the middle of my chest. No. Walk straight out into the backyard. My forehead is perpendicular to the driveway right here. Am I considered tall? This time, I make a vow to the dark yard in front of me, since the moon is working on a prior request. And when I make it, I pretend I'm convincing a workman to emote with me, i.e., the force that I confess to and of and for is Herb from the Beaver Falls Municipal Authority, who works with my dad and is about to retire. I'm of the age when every romantic pathway seems difficult, interrupted, kept from you at bonfires. I was not unhappy on that day. I was just profoundly a quality beside the fact that it happened. Me and Herb, we're gonna hold hands at breakfast. I'll drive him around in his maroon F-150 or whatever, and he'll borrow my scratched Incubus CD, since we are the poets of true realm, poets of the spatula and the carriage bolt. Thank you very much.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you. That's absolutely lovely. Appreciate it. Thank you. Let's go to our final two readers of the evening. Let me bring on first Ruth Madievsky. Her debut novel, All Night Pharmacy, is forthcoming from Catapult in 2023. She's also the author of the poetry collection Emergency Break, and her work has appeared in The Atlantic, Los Angeles Times, Harper's Bazaar, American Poetry Review, and Zyzzyva, and elsewhere. Originally from Moldova, she lives in Los Angeles, where she works as an HIV and primary care pharmacist. Will you please give a warm welcome, as warm as you can do this over Zoom, for Ruth Madievsky.
Thank you. So good to be here virtually. I've been to a lot of very fun Zyzzyva readings in person, so it's definitely bittersweet to be doing it again with you all. So I think I'm going to be a little chaotic, and even though I had poems in the issue, read a little bit of fiction. I just turned in the first round of copy edits for my novel All Night Pharmacy, which comes out next July. So I think I'll read the opening of the novel, just a few pages. And yeah, y'all are the first to hear it because it's my first time reading it. And you don't need to know anything. It's just the first few pages. And it's called All Night Pharmacy. Spending time with my sister Debbie was like buying acid off a guy you met on the bus. You never knew if it would end with you, euphoric, tanning topless on a fishing boat headed for Ensenada, or coming to in a gas station bathroom, the insides of your eyes feeling as though they'd been scraped out with spoons. Often, it was both. The first time Debbie took me to Salvation, she dressed me in a highlighter pink bandage dress with cutouts up the sides. She wouldn't let me wear a bra. Nipple outline is part of the look, she insisted. We were at her apartment, a dingy West Hollywood complex with permanent pigeon shit stains on its maroon awnings. She lived there with her on-again, off-again musician boyfriend, Dominic, who was really just an addict with a guitar. He wrote songs with names like Heroin Heroin and Salty Surprise. If he'd ever made money off his music, it left his hand before it reached his wallet. I watched Debbie do my makeup in her filmy bathroom mirror. She held a smoky eye palette in her palm like a clamshell, lips parted as she painted my face. Debbie had big blue eyes and a pout that made men do stupid things. People said we looked alike, but no one ever mistook one of us for the other. Debbie wore her body like she owned it. For me, it was the other way around. She was only 5'2", but that made her more powerful. You could fall asleep spooning her and wake up with a screwdriver pressed to your throat. She was so alive, it was scary. I could hear her heart beating from another room. Sometimes she bruised herself sleeping. Her blood was that close to the surface. She powdered the corners of my eyes, and I could count every flag of dead skin in her lips. Her breath smelled of barbecue chips. She'd sucked the blackheads from her nose with a pore strip earlier, but she intentionally left a cluster above her right nostril. Making one imperfection visible makes another invisible, she explained. So this was why she'd half-heartedly tweeze my eyebrows, to distract from the way my ears poked out of my hair, how my bottom lip was thicker than my top. I craned my neck to watch myself transform in the mirror. Stop moving, Debbie said, forcing my head back. Keep your eyes on me. She didn't want me to learn how to do my own makeup. It would upset our dynamic of her as artist and me as canvas. I was 18 and had just graduated high school. My plan was to do 2 years at Valley College and transfer to UCLA. I couldn't decide whether to study English or biology, so I was considering registering for classes in both. Debbie had planned the night out as a graduation present. Drinks are on me, she said that afternoon, which meant she'd had a good shift at the strip club. I occasionally kept her company in the dressing room as an excuse to get out of the apartment I shared with our mother. And okay, maybe I got something out of the dressing room too. With so many tits, tattoos, and sequins flying against a fluorescent sky, it was easy to miss that the teen girl doing her homework hadn't flipped a page in the last hour. I watched the women as casually as I could, pretending I was checking out their their outfits and not them. Occasionally, one of them held my gaze. I imagined following her out of the club, wrapping myself around her in the backseat of her car, kissing her neck as she lifted my shirt, demanding to see me now that I'd seen her. Holy shit, Debbie said, my best work yet. She stepped aside so I could see myself in the mirror. My eyelids were a gradient from silver to galaxy black. The wings of my eyeliner sharp as needles, lips the color of honey, and more symmetrical than I'd ever felt. Do you like it? She asked. The uncapped lipstick in her hand was called Toxic. I looked icy and confident. Unfocusing my eyes, I pretended I was looking at some other girl entirely. It's perfect, I said. Salvation was in a rapidly gentrifying part of East Hollywood, on the same block as a hipster coffee shop, a karate studio, taqueria, and a weed dispensary. The bar was nondescript from the outside, announcing itself with a flickering lime green neon sign. There was no line. The bouncer asked for our IDs, and I slipped him my fake. He barely glanced at it before stamping my hand with a crucifix. I felt a surge of protest, a desire to declare I was Jewish, but the only Hebrew I knew was the wine prayer our father used to recite ironically. My discomfort at being inked with Christian insignia was half-hearted and came from the part of me that wanted to be rewarded for acting correctly. Being a person, didn't come naturally to me the way it seemed to for others. People who were sure of themselves awed me. I studied them and tried to mimic their ease. Sometimes I got away with it, but never with Debbie. She saw through me down to my bones. Inside was equally underwhelming. Red pleather booths, glossy pub tables, string lights, a dozen stools lining the bar counter, a jukebox. Salvation used to be a Christian bookstore by the same name. Aside from decorative signs like Christian Living and used Bibles, and the bookshelves displaying various liquor bottles behind the bar, it looked like any other dive. The people were another story. Many looked like they'd wandered in after giving up on the lines for the gastropub across the street. A smaller contingent had the air of longtime regulars trying to ignore the bougie new clientele. I followed Debbie to the bar where we claimed the only open stools. To our right, a woman was leafing through an enormous album of sepia-toned photos, a plastic pharmacy bag in her lap. To our left, two men were playing a card game where every card was the 5 of clubs. What's the deal with this place? I asked. Debbie ordered 2 Moscow mules before I could look at a menu. You'll see. We spent the night chatting up strangers and people Debbie knew from previous nights out. There was Grant, who'd moved to Los Angeles from Idaho to become an actor and had so far only booked a community theater production of Starlight Express and gay for pay porn. There was Ashley, an energy healer who'd been wearing a jade egg in her pussy for 2 years to convert her traumas into sexual energy. And there was Karina, who gave us mystery pills as my graduation present. And I think I'll stop before the mystery pills hit. So if you want to find out what happens next, the pre-order link will probably be available toward the end of this year. So keep an eye out for that. And it comes out 7/11/2023.
Wow.
And if you want to stay in touch, I am on Twitter. I will drop my handle here. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Ruth. That was fantastic. It does not remind me quite of my youth in LA, but I've been adjacent to those circles. Holy moly. So, oh, wow. Well, thank you. Thank you, Ruth. And yes, and of course, her poetry is in the issue, folks. So if you want to do that, Ruth does it all. She does it all. And I'm not just
multitudes.
saying, that's right. I'm not just saying because we're both Trojans. It's true. All right. Our final reader for the evening is Maggie Milner. Maggie is the author of Couplets, a love story. It's a novel in verse. That's going to be something else. Forthcoming from FSG and Faber next year. Her poems appear in the New Yorker, the Paris Review, the Nation, Poetry, Zyzzyva, and elsewhere. She is a lecturer at Yale and a senior editor at the now rejuvenated, very wonderful the Yale Review. Please, a warm welcome for Maggie Millner.
Thank you, Oscar. I'm so happy to be here virtually. I have a deep love of Zyzzyva. Zyzzyva was the first real literary magazine that I ever had any affiliation with when I was a very fresh college graduate in California, and I interned at Zyzzyva, and Laura and Oscar just made me feel like a career in literary publishing was the coolest thing you could do. And we had so much fun, and it's such a pleasure to be reading for you guys. I'm just going to read 3 poems that appear in the issue. So none of these are from my forthcoming book. They're all kind of the fresh aftermath of that. These are the 3 that are in this wonderful new issue of Zyzzyva. So please go pick it up and support them. The first is called Brooklyn. I stood above him, watching from my bedroom window. So for a moment, I couldn't tell the man was Travis. I hadn't recognized his clothes, his helmet. Then slowly he turned to reveal his backpack and rocked back on his heels, and I knew beyond a doubt who was in the yard waiting for Joe to come out and play basketball with him. Because I had grown up quite literally in the woods, the concept of neighbors still delighted me, as I hoped it would forever. I didn't know how long it would last, living with my friends in a neighborhood so full of friends, because the nuclear family still seemed the inevitable crux of the household. Someday one of us would marry and leave, and then everyone would. But then, of course, nothing was going according to history. I was gay and in love with someone who could not make me pregnant. And the idea of ever owning property in this city, which I loved as I didn't know a place could be loved, was like the idea of someday becoming a decorated athlete or outgrowing my anxiety. Civic failures had begun to preclude, we felt, prior forms of adulthood. Our solutions were pragmatic, the opposite of juvenile, especially the joy we found in each other, which made us want, I think, to keep living, to see it through. Joe stepped out into the light, and Travis opened his arms in greeting. The second poem is called Funnel. We were staying in Avila by the reservoir like a small sea that shrank each night when water was piped out to the farms, exposing sandbanks we could cross to what had been an island yesterday. Everything just plain, the hills with halted cows, your breasts with nothing on, cold beer, shrimp from the plancha we swallowed without salt, and the cabin where we slept through heat, then sucked each other off between unvarnished walls, and which in its austerity reminded me of other rooms I'd fucked inside, though the number has gone down and down since the time in my life not so long ago when I used to call even pleasureless things sex. And I'll just read one more, another poem dedicated to my friends, which I've been writing a lot of those lately. My compliments. I'd never understood why some people weren't generous with affection. What did it cost you? That was my favorite thing about myself, how easily I lavished praise on my friends, praise I intended fervently with no motives except the ones I'd excavate much later, hating myself, PMSing in therapy. I tended to explain it this way. My parents loved me desperately as a child, so I came away with great stores of compliments to spend on the people around me. But when the same friends didn't return the gesture in kind, and this was a lot of them, as a young person, I would find it difficult not to fault them for it, since they had seen the behavior, I thought, modeled perfectly by me. It's so baffling that people can experience love without the compulsion to communicate it. So many novels proceed this way, maddeningly, with desire dying always in coyness. Recently, though, I read one without resenting the characters at all, and instead actually cried when it ended, so fond of them I'd grown. At some point, I had come to appreciate those people who love quietly, and to see it as the failure of my own generosity, not to accept what they offered in silence. Thank you so much.
Wow, thank you, Maggie, so much. That was beautiful. Thank you. And thank you to all of our readers tonight, Maggie, Victoria, Chris, Joan, and Ruth. Am I missing anybody? I don't think so. I can't tell anymore. I don't trust my thoughts. Not my thoughts, my memory. It's not so hot. But more importantly, thank you all for coming out to see us. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you to City Lights. Part of the reason, if not the main reason we do this, is to be around y'all, to be around folks who care about these things and are such wonderful practitioners of the literary arts. So it's sort of it is a blessing to be able to do this and to be able to enjoy all this work and to enjoy each other's company. So on behalf of Zyzzyva, meaning myself and Laura and Zach and Laura Howard, thank you all for attending tonight and for supporting these fine writers.
Thank you, Oscar. And a big shout out to Laura, who's actually in the room. To all of you from different time zones even, and some of you staying up very, very late. So really very grateful for that. Everybody, we have posted links in the chat with which you may visit the Zyzzyva website. Also, make a contribution, subscribe, buy the new issue, which is 123, which is the poetry issue. Just some amazing, amazing, wonderful, wonderful work. Support them. We need them. They are one of the backbones of the literary culture here in San Francisco. As always, City Lights loves you. We hope to see you again all very, very soon. We were talking earlier tonight about how weird it is that these sessions just sort of end so abruptly. And we were thinking like, it might just be fun to not let it end so abruptly tonight, that I don't know, just sort of let it slowly teeter off. Anybody wants to hang around in the room, anybody wants to raise their hand and make a comment, I think we're just going to let it ride and see what happens. I'm going to unmute all of our speakers in case you all have anything to say, and then I'm going to put Laura on the spot because actually I have a
it's a wonderful idea.
Let me see if I can find her.
Don't let her get away.
No,
come on now.
You ain't getting away, Laura.
She's there.
Come on, unmute. There you go.
Hi, Peter.
So come on, tell us, like, what do you do in a just day to day? You get to the office, what's it like? I mean, do you have a slush pile of manuscripts? I mean, what happens? How do you make this thing come to life?
Well, thank you so much for having us, Peter. It's so nice to be together. If remotely, it's still wonderful. And just as Oscar said, it's a big part of the reason we do what we do is to get to have these opportunities to be with you all, virtually or otherwise. We're still in community, and that's the engine that makes this go. So thank you to City Lights for being such a center for all of that, for all of us, and to all our contributors. The unsolicited submissions are really important for us. They're time consuming. We're behind, we're perpetually behind, and doing our best to catch up, but that's a constant challenge. And Oscar and I are constantly touching base about manuscripts. That's just a big part of it. And it's one of the parts of it that, it's essential and we enjoy it. And it's also, it's really hard to keep up.
Oscar?
It's Sisyphean, I tell you.
Yeah.
Sisyphean. But that's all right. I like Camus. I'll let you figure that one out. Just think about it.
Yeah.
There it is.
I have to comment that, Chris Carosi, you're the ones that introduced Chris Carosi to me. And then later Chris was working for City Lights, which is really awesome.
Yeah, should I say the story? I mean, I was going to say it in the thing, but in my intro, but I also interned at Zyzzyva, and my now wife did too, and we met at one of the first intern parties, I think.
The
first one, yeah, that's where we met. And then a little bit after that, long after that, a couple years later, I got my job at City Lights as a result of my relationship with Oscar and Laura. So yeah, I'm very fond of Zyzzyva, extremely fond.
You could call them literary yentals.
Yeah.
I remember Oscar and I had a conversation one day after a lot of that had happened, and I was like, if we do nothing else, we did something nice here.
Yeah, yeah.
So
we
awesome.
can't really take any credit for any of that, but we're happy to have
I'm
been
taking
sort of
credit
the
for that.
geographic center of it or something.
Yeah.
It's our legacy, damn it.
Yeah, that's that's a lot on your shoulders, Chris. But
And like I said, like, that's one thing, but when it came time to support me as a poet, you guys were also there for me. And so, somehow you became even more of a significant part of my life as a result. But yeah, so I really appreciate that.
well, you're doing really beautiful work, and I think
Thank you.
part of the joy of putting this issue together was just not that we had sort of been blind to it before, but taking the time to really deliberately look at how incredibly rich and diverse the contemporary poetry landscape is just was so exciting and so rewarding for us. And to put together the poetry selections, but also the prose that talked about poetry and thought about poetry. It was just, I found it really rewarding to work on.
Mm-hmm. I was just going to say, I'm so excited that, one of my favorite subgenres are poets who write novels. That's always such a good thing. William Brewer, we recently published his book, The Red Arrow, just came out. The Ruth, Paul Beatty. Paul, of course, started off, with those two wonderful poetry collections before writing his novels. This is fantastic. And Maggie, novel and verse, that's phenomenal.
So excited to read your books, you guys.
Yes, that's was it Virkum Seth, The Golden Gate? That was in verse. That was a novel verse, correct? And I think Craig Rain, didn't he write one years ago, a novel in verse as well? When they're such wonderful undertakings. I'm so excited. It's such a it's like I don't know. It's like hardcore literature. You know what I'm saying? Not that it's difficult. That's not what I mean. But just for the the beauty of it, of writing that way, and also the way that poets it becomes, to me anyway, you can see when a poet is writing prose. It becomes quite evident. The rhythms, the word choices, all these sort of things. They're just there. I don't know what would you say, Laura? I wouldn't say like it juices it up, but there's something about that style of of prose, maybe almost Nabokovian or something.
I think when you're, accustomed to writing in a form where really every single word that's on the page has to earn its spot, it can really serve you in a transition to prose, right? And that's really clear. I guess the other thing I was thinking about that's not particular to poetry right now, but more about contemporary literature in general, and the joy of doing this work right now, is that while things are really grim in so many ways, I think the state of contemporary literature is anything but. And I was even thinking about the way that I feel about the questions I get asked. I think people are asking better questions. And if there's anything hopeful going on, it might be that. I know it sounds really mundane, but I was thinking about how the first year that Oscar and I were running the journal, the question I got asked the most was just about like whether we were going to keep the journal in print and whether the technology of publishing it moved past print. And that's a fine question. I am happy to answer that question. We can keep talking about that. But there are better questions. And I feel like I'm getting more of those now. And I think that's a good thing.
It's really exciting to me that you've been doing these writers' workshops. Can you talk a little bit about what goes on at these? And then you've got Vanessa coming up, in the fall, which is really exciting. I love her work. Give it that a little plug if you would.
Oscar, do you want to talk about the workshops?
Well, they're sort of more like seminars now.
Yeah.
COVID, it's kind of made it tough. We used to have our workshops were all in person, and then we did it for a while. It's still a Zoom, but then we found out that craft talks and seminar talks seem to be more towards what people were attracted to, and and also something I think that interested the instructors more, and being able to talk specifically about something that they're very usually passionate about, but also well informed about. you know, and it seems like it's a win-win for everybody. You know, folks get in, like for example, for Vanessa's workshop specifically on this writing cross culture. Earlier, Ingrid Rojas Contreras, she did hers about writing trauma, very specific, very focused, and you know, the feedback that we got from folks was that this is wonderful. It's you know, any literary journal, really you're performing a variety of functions, because it's sort of, you know, you're serving a community, and so you try to find all the ways you can to serve a community, you know, and that's part of it. You know, it's the workshops, it's the website, it's the print you know, journal itself, it's this events, it's panels, it's everything. It's really everything.
Well, we love what you do, and we want to support you and make sure that you just keep doing it. And you know, I want to put something out now to tonight's readers. Anybody have any final thoughts or any comments, or, you know, Maggie, Ruth?
I want to mention that this is the first I've been published in Zyzzyva, and I'm really appreciative. And I think events like this are fantastic, and the issue itself is really gorgeous. And you know, you also have like full color art in it, so it's just been such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much, Joan. It's such a pleasure to get you into the journal. Delight.
Anybody
I'm a big
else?
City Lights fan, and I haven't been able to go in the last few years because of the pandemic and briefly living on the East Coast, but really hope to make it out there again soon in person.
Well, we've started doing events in the alley slowly, just inching along, and going to see how that goes, going to see how the variants go and all that. But, you know, I'm hoping that we actually get to do a little bit more. And it's really awkward right now to do anything inside the store. I mean, you know how angular and kind of everything is. But, you know, we want to get there. I want to get there someday. Yeah. So such a great pleasure always. Thank you, everyone. And want to remind you all, City Lights is open for business. We're open 12 noon until 8 p.m. And I think now on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, we're open a little bit later, up until 9 from 11 in the morning. So we're kind of widening the scope of our hours. Come on down, browse our stacks. Love to see you. Of course, you know, we're also a publishing house as well as a bookstore. We publish all kinds of stuff. Check out our website to learn more about that. Tonight's event has been made possible by support from the City Lights Foundation, continuing the legacy of our founder, the late Lawrence Ferlinghetti, through public events like this one, a publishing program, educational outreach, all of it dedicated to sustaining a vibrant community of readers, writers, and independent thinkers. So I guess this may be it, unless anyone has any last comments, anything. You want to raise your hand? Anybody out there? No?
Nobody?
Nobody? No?
I like to say something. I think Trey Lance is going to be fantastic. I'm just putting that out there.
I will take that to heart. Love you all. Thank you.
Peter. Thank you so much, Peter.
Everybody.
Everybody.